The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Alan Blumkin with my special guest, David Nemec, and we're going to do another podcast on David Nemec's history and trivia. Welcome, David.
Welcome to you, Al. Pleasure to be with you once again.
Same here. Okay. First of all, we're going to discuss the COVID effect on sports today. David, you want to start?
I do. I'm very upset about it. I know the National Basketball and the NBA got a season in, and the NHL got a season in last year. They had some problems, but they managed to get a shortened season in by playing more or less in bubbles. The NBA literally in a bubble, and the NHL by playing only in two cities, both in Canada, where COVID is has much less impact as of yet than it does here in the United States. And this year, both leagues are trying to get away with playing in their towns. The teams are playing in their towns, and they're running into all sorts of problems. The NHL has shortened the season to 56 games. They're already facing the possibility of cancellations on opening night, which I believe is tonight. Am I right, Al? I think it's tonight.
Yeah, I saw that on the ESPN web. I knew it was sometime this week, but I didn't realize it was tonight.
And the NBA has run into problems now that they're playing home games in cities where teams represent.
They're playing 70. They're scheduled to play 72 games, which is what they played back in the 1950s, and they're shorter than the normal 82. And you have teams playing like a baseball series on the road. You have teams that come, like Denver comes from the Mountain Time Zone, and they play the Knicks and the Nets in successive nights. And then there was couple of situations where a Western team played an Eastern team, successive nights.
Yeah, I know that's. I think they're probably doing that more as for safety than for any thought behind. Playing the team that has to play two nights in a row is always at a serious disadvantage, I think, whether it's home or on the road. And they're just doing it to get in and out of town as fast as possible, I think, and not create situations or allow situations to develop where players are at loose ends, have a day to themselves or an evening or whatever. And they're, players being human beings, they're going to associate with one another, and they can get into trouble, all kinds of trouble that way on the road. Somehow the NFL has succeeded in finishing its season. I don't know how, and getting into the playoffs. Every team has faced COVID problems. Cleveland this past weekend, their head coach had to spend the afternoon as Browns were playing in Pittsburgh in his basement, totally cut off from the team. He wasn't allowed to take phone calls. He wasn't allowed to make any phone calls that had anything to do with the team. And it's a crazy situation. The team was coached by assistants. A couple, guys were out with COVID. They were playing with a lineup of, several guys who weren't even on the roster at the beginning of the week. And they're not the only team that's doing it. Every team faces the possibility of a star quarterback not being available for the game. And in football, more so than other sports, if your quarterback is out or your top running back, you really can't be competitive usually, because baseball, your fill-in is going to be pretty good if you're filling in for just one man. But in football, you're not going to fill in for an all-pro quarterback.
Ohio State had. I watched the first half of that game the other night, and Ohio State had a number of players who were out with the COVID.
Yeah, they did.
Please don't bring up the Cleveland Browns because I'm a Steelers fan. 28-0 after the first quarter.
I know that. That's why I didn't want to say anything about the game itself. It was the most bizarre.
Somebody asked me if I got a couple of friends calling me up and asking me whether or not I was totally depressed. I said, well, I'm totally depressed. First, they didn't deserve to win. You turn the ball over that much, you don't deserve to win. And second of all, there's nothing I can do about it.
No, there's absolutely nothing.
It was
the most bizarre game ever.
Yeah, I'll get upset by teams I root for when teams I root for lose.
Well, I'm the same way. It
took me a lifetime to stop feeling like that, but.
Yeah. No, it's well, I'm still dealing with it because I expected Ohio State. I didn't think they'd win, but I did think they'd be competitive, and they weren't. Right from the start, they had no answers for Alabama's offense, which I've never seen an offense as powerful as that. But Alabama, speaking of COVID, their coach was tested positive at one point. It was a false positive.
Yeah,
the Ohio State coach, on the other hand, Ryan Day, was tested positive and had to sit out a game. And assistants had to handle the game. I think it was with Michigan State, if I'm not mistaken. And it happens. It happens, and it's unfortunate. But I don't know that. Professional sports in particular, or even college sports, are handling it correctly, because college sports are trotting out these athletes. Even Alabama, which ran a pretty much immaculate program, I did not think they had any business putting this kid Waddle, who'd been injured earlier in the season and been out until the final playoff game, should be on the field. You could see him limping. This is a kid with all pro aspirations, high draft choice, and you can see him limping. Alabama didn't need him. I'm sure he wanted to play. I'm sure he wanted to go out there, but the chances of him being injured and ruining his possibilities of a pro career were, I think, significant. And that's what these kids are all about. They're not getting paid. They have no incentive other than to play and to win. And to boost their draft prospects in the pros, and for 80% of the people who were on the field in the Monday night game between Ohio State and Alabama, at least 75 or 80% of them are never going to play pro football. That was their for the seniors. That was their quota game, and they ran terrible risks all season just to play it. That's how much sports mean now. Not only the players but the fans too. So fans will try any angle to get into a game.
Yeah.
Even though there's supposed to be no attendance or only minimal attendance, they'll still go out there and they'll the tailgate parties are, of course, not supposed to happen, but stuff happens. And people go to games. They do get COVID. They bring it back to their families. And I don't know that sports, both college and pro, are really serving the public well in what they're doing.
Well, the only real hiccup in the NFL this past season was the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, they wound up playing in the first Tuesday night in the history of pro football against the Steelers, I think it was.
Yeah, that game was. Yeah, the Steelers. Well, yeah, the Steelers had a terrible schedule because of COVID. They didn't get an off week, and that may have been part of what showed up in the game on Sunday. These guys hadn't had a week off since the start of the season. They'd been sitting on COVID cancellations, having to play the games in the middle of the week, and that has to take an effect after a while, because playing NFL football, I don't care what anybody says, it is brutal. It is brutal, and it's the hardest sport. It's hard to watch because the players are fast, they're big, they hit hard, and it's definitely not like watching a game. If you watch a rerun of a game from the 50s or 60s with running backs from Jim Brown and Gale Sayers were around, and they weren't getting hit as hard as the running backs are today, not nearly as hard.
Yeah, it looks like they'll be able to complete the season on time. Because all they got is 7 games left. They got 4 this weekend, 2 the following week, and then the Super Bowl 2 weeks after that.
Yeah.
And baseball, the 2 most affected teams are the Marlins and the Cardinals. And, I was of the opinion, I don't know if you agree with me, that a team that has the COVID should have to forfeit the game.
Well, there's a case for that, certainly.
Because the other team, which has nobody, they're getting penalized also.
They are. And I don't think it was sheer team ability that brought both the Marlins and the Cardinals into the playoffs. I think it was the fact that they did have COVID and they did have to sit out games and end up playing 7-inning doubleheaders. And as a result, it had less impact on their pitching staffs. Their pitchers were fresher at the end of the season. I think that had quite a bit to do with them. Some of these teams making the playoffs. Whereas those teams that played 69-inning games, their pitchers had to pitch them in quite a few more innings. And in the playoffs, as we both know well, pitching really counts for, I don't know what percentage, but it's very high.
Even now, when they use 9 or 10 pitchers in a game,
Yeah, I know.
I'm finding it impossible to watch because of all the pitching changes. Yeah,
let alone try and keep track of the roster and who because even if you're watching your favorite team, you really can't keep track of them for more than a day or 2 at a time. Because the rosters change on the fly all the time.
Yeah, and also college basketball is getting hit pretty big by this also.
I know.
It has had to postpone 2 games already. They're basically playing all conference at this stage.
Will they try to make them up?
As far as I know, yeah. And they're not the only one. I think the Purdue and the Big Ten, and there's got to be others that have to do this.
Yeah, I don't know I don't know what sports can do. I don't know because sports, it's we're both bad mouthing what these leagues are doing and the way athletes are being treated, but at the same time, the fact that they exist at all, I think, is for the general public a tremendous boon and spirit, because without sports right now, I think a lot of people would be suffering even more than they are. I think
in fact, this is a few weeks after the pandemic started, and baseball was out, and basketball and hockey were on hold, and the NFL draft got their highest ratings ever. because there was no real action going on.
Yeah, and I know. I find myself even watching classic sports. Games from the 80s, 90s, and some even earlier. which I normally don't do unless it's going to be a game I remember well and want to make sure my memory of it is correct. But there really isn't, unless you're, heavily into the political stuff, which you certainly can be. There's a lot there. But sports, I will admit, sports mean a lot to me, too. I spend a lot of time watching them. I'm sorry to see the college football season end, and I'm not, I don't watch much NBA, and football will be ending, and it'll be a while before baseball starts. So there's always that lag every winter, that lull when, only the NBA and the NHL are going, and it's always a difficult time for me.
Yeah,
and
I rarely watch NBA regular season games.
Yeah, they're kind of meaningless.
Yeah, and I think this past season Washington won 35 games or something like that, and they got into the playoffs. Of course, they got creamed in the first series, but still. I know.
Well, yeah. Well, the Washington football team went 7-9, and they not only got into the playoffs, they played a home game in the first round.
Yeah,
I thought that was incredible.
There was a lot of stuff in the papers here about how the Eagles dumped the last game and cost the Giants. The Giants were horrible. They're 6-10. They were horrible. They probably couldn't even beat Alabama at this point. I definitely think that Alabama could hold its own against the Jaguars and the Jets, who are the two worst teams in the NFL this year.
I think the Alabama probably could have held its own against several teams in the NFL, not just the tail enders, because that team just had so many weapons. Their defense was a little suspect. They would have been scored on definitely in the NFL, but I think their offense would have done all right against most NFL teams. They were the most powerful college team I think I've ever seen assembled.
Oh yeah, I put that down, and I messaged to somebody that this is one of the best teams I've ever seen. I says, and I go back to 1954.
Yeah, no, I agree. I haven't seen a better one, and but some of the Miami teams in the 90s, early 90s, they had some pretty good teams, but I don't think they were nearly the strength of the Alabama team this year.
They deserved it. I mean, they played everybody. They didn't play cupcakes this year like they normally do, and
nobody could stop them. Nobody could stop them. Yeah. Texas A&M could well have been the second best team in the country, and they took a beating from Alabama early in the season, and it kept them down. Texas and A&M and Ohio State would have been a much more interesting game, and I think it would have been up for grabs. But they didn't even get in among the 14 because of that one loss. Notre Dame got in instead with one loss, and I think that was very a big mistake. Because they
lost the first time they lost to Clemson. First time they beat Clemson in double overtime when Clemson quarterback was out.
Right,
and then
they had a couple guys out with COVID.
Yeah, and then the Clemson knocked the hell out of them in the rematch.
Yeah, wasn't even a game.
I think the reason they gave it to Notre Dame is box office.
Yeah.
No matter how many years it's been since they've been, at the top.
It's been I think they haven't won a major game. They haven't won a major bowl game since the 20th century began, or 21st century began. I think they're like 0-4, 0-5 in postseason against in top-notch bowl games. Some of the weaker bowl games they play, I think they won. But they really haven't even been competitive when they're matched up with teams in the top 10 in bowl games. So they're not in a conference. Somehow they skate by with their reputation and the fact that they're independent, and they're Notre Dame. They have a long history of great football over the years. So that lasts, and that people still remember.
They joined the ACC in football. They're a member of the ACC and everything else. But they've always kept the football separate because of the money that they were being paid to be an independent. And I don't know whether or not they'll stay in the conference for football. If this thing is as bad as it is, by the time the next college football season starts, it'll definitely be in. And Ohio State plays 7 games, and Michigan opted out of at least 3 games.
Yeah, Michigan opted out of the Ohio State game, which was
they gave Harbaugh a contract extension.
Yeah, I know. They had nobody else. They searched. They searched. They wanted either a pro coach, an NFL coach, or a college coach. I think they were looking at Luke Fickell pretty hard, the Cincinnati coach, who put together a very good team, and he's an ex-Ohio State player, and he coached the team 1 year when Tressel was suspended before they hired Urban Meyer. They were looking pretty hard at Fickell. I don't think Fickell wanted the job because, one, they've been bad for a long time. Not terribly bad, but just bad enough to no longer be considered among the top echelon teams. And secondly, because he'd be playing Ohio State, his alma mater. And I don't know, Bo Schembechler, who had been an assistant under Woody Hayes, did take the Michigan job. And then Woody Hayes and Schembechler had some great matchups, but Schembechler hadn't been a player for Ohio State. Fickell had been both a player and a head coach, so I think they looked at him pretty carefully, and I think Fickell turned them down.
There are a lot of pro vacancies at this point. I think
yeah, there are.
With the Eagles firing their coach the other day, I think that's 7 now.
Yeah, and the guy, how long was it? 2 years ago or 3 years ago? I mean, when the
3 years ago. 3 years ago.
Yeah, it's so fast. I mean, things just change so quickly in pro football. I don't know that. The coaches come and go. Just like musical chairs, and with a team like Cleveland that's been bad for so long, it's easy to see why coaches don't last more than a year or two. But Pittsburgh, Mike Tomlin has been there for more than 10 years, like 12 years now, or 13 years.
Yeah, him. They've only had 3 coaches since 1960. Yeah. Chuck Noll, Cowher, and Tomlin. That's it.
Yeah, when the leagues merged, the AFL and the NFL, and Pittsburgh and Cleveland were brought into the same division. Cleveland came into the division with the best overall winning percentage of any NFL team who played more than 20 years in the NFL, and played at least 20 years in the NFL. And Pittsburgh came in with, I think, the lowest winning percentage of any, and they were put in the same conference, and that turned around. Cleveland has never gone to the Super Bowl, and Pittsburgh, with the hiring of Noel, who was a Brown assistant and a former Browns player, that team turned around very quickly, and they've been a powerhouse ever since. And Cowher was a good coach, and I think Tomlin is a great coach. He's a player's coach. They all love him.
How he got 8-8 out of that team, not this past season, the one before in 2019, was unbelievable. But Roethlisberger looked very, very old.
I think that should have been rough. Yeah, I think it should have been Roethlisberger's last game on Sunday. I think he'd be smart to retire. he's only going to hurt himself.
Yeah, he looked very bad. In the last 4 or 5 games, he looked very old. Yeah.
This guy Rudolph I thought he looked pretty good against the Browns, he's every time I've seen him play, he's looked pretty good. I don't know if they're counting on him to be the replacement, or they're going to try and draft somebody, but he at least deserves being given a chance, I think.
Yeah. But also in baseball, the free agent movement has been very slow. All the owners are crying poverty. In fact, I suggested to some people we start a GoFundMe page for the owners.
Yeah.
And the big one up here is LeMahieu. If George Steinbrenner was still owning a team, the vault would be opened. But the son, Hal, who's running a team last night, right now, doesn't want to go above the luxury tax. And somebody said in the paper that, they should trade John Carlos Stanton, excuse me. Who the hell is going to take on that contract?
Yeah, I know.
The guy's hurt all the time.
Yeah, he had that one great season. That's pretty nice.
Nobody's going to take that contract on. Are you kidding?
No.
That buyout would probably cost a lot of money also.
Yeah, baseball with the free, with the team's crying poor. I don't believe it either. I just don't. I don't see the Cleveland. Cleveland is a good sports town. He put a good team in the field, and for a couple of years and they're going to get back to where they were in the '90s.
They're going to be the Pirates.
But now they're going to become the Pirates. They really are, because the trade with the Mets was a horrible trade. I don't know why. I don't know what Cleveland was thinking, but they didn't get anything in return that is likely to yield much in the next season or even the season afterward.
Yeah, well, and that particular player is not going to sign long term with the team he's on.
No.
It lessens his value.
Yeah. Well, they did this, but they did the same thing last year with Kluber, and Kluber ended up getting hurt.
Yeah.
And then they traded Clevenger to the San
Diego.
Clevenger won.
Tommy John, yeah, he's going to all year.
It's crazy. So so far, they traded Bauer too to the Reds, and Bauer won the Cy Young. And nobody seems to want to pay what Bauer wants. What Bauer's looking for. I think that I don't know why, but maybe because
I think they probably regard him as somewhat of a head case.
Well, he's difficult. He thinks for himself. Yeah. He holds his, but he keeps his thoughts mostly to himself. If he's grilled or interviewed by somebody he takes seriously, he'll yield up to information about his thinking. But for most, he just blows them off and gives them what they want to hear. But he did end his career in Cleveland by throwing the ball over the center field wall as he was when he was being removed from the mound. So he'll always be remembered for that. But he's certainly, I think, a potentially great pitcher. And he's still potential, even though he won a Cy Young last year, because that's really the first year he's put it all together for a full season. And the full season is only 60 games. So it remains to be seen if he's a quality pitcher for 162 games. And we might not get to look at that this year either. I don't know. Yeah,
well, the way things are now financially brings me back to the 1950s when the Washington Senators and the St. Louis Browns didn't even have AAA teams, a farm system. And you had certain teams, the big teams, the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Giants, the Cardinals, among others. They all had two.
Yeah.
So, and one thing in the NFL, Green Bay, who players would not normally agree to go to, is as competitive as any of the big city teams.
Yeah, the NFL is amazing in that they have maintained competitive balance. And if a team is bad year after year, it's usually the team's fault. They're drafting poorly. They're hiring poor coaches.
Yeah.
Cleveland was down for years, but it wasn't because of that the talent wasn't being spread around. It was that Cleveland was making bad draft picks, hiring poor coaches. They had a couple bad breaks, a couple bad injuries. But pro football, the Jaguars were a playoff team. They were,
a few years ago.
Even this year,
they beat the Steelers. They beat the Steelers in the division round game, where the Steelers had to bye. The Steelers couldn't stop them.
Yeah, and that was 2 years ago, right?
That was. I think it was one of the times the Patriots beat them in a championship game and went to the Super Bowl.
Okay.
I think it was 2012 or 2011.
That long ago. Okay. I think the Jaguars are in the playoffs. Weren't they in 2 years ago? I seem to remember.
Yeah, maybe it was 2 years ago. Yeah.
And this year they won only one game.
The Jets have been horrible. Yesterday was the 52nd anniversary of their Super Bowl win, which they're still living off.
Yeah.
And they're a total joke. I mean, this coach that they have now won 5 games in 2 years.
Yeah.
And they're in total disarray. They've been in total disarray for years and years and years. I mean, I think they only made the playoffs 2 or 3 times since that Super Bowl win.
Yeah.
But the worst in the NFL is Detroit, who hasn't won a game, gotten to a Super Bowl. I think they've won 1 or 2 playoff games since then.
They won 1 playoff game since 1957. They won the NFL championship over the Browns in '57. And
I know that.
63 years since, they've won 1 playoff game, and they haven't even got a sniff of the.
In 1991, they played the Redskins in the conference championship game, and the Redskins just beat the hell out of them.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I think that was
the last time the Cardinals won was 1948.
Yeah, that's right. Well, wait a minute. Didn't they won while they were in St. Louis, didn't they?
No.
Oh, wait a minute. St. Louis with the Rams, yeah. All right.
The Cardinals were St. Louis. Cardinals were in St. Louis for 27 years. And they were in Chicago before them, and that's when they won the...
They won
1947 they won.
That's it. I think it was 48 they won. 49 the Eagles won.
No, the Eagles won in 48 and 49. The 48 game was played in a snowstorm.
Oh, that's right. Okay, because it's 48 in the opening game.
The Cardinals beat the Eagles in 47, yeah.
Okay, you're right, because I remember the opening game in 48, a guard named Stan Malden died after the opening game. It was a very, very circumstances that have never been totally revealed even today. I've heard from guys who were at the game what really happened, and I'd rather not discuss it right now. But it was he took a severe beating, and nothing was done about it. Referees didn't do much, and it was a night game. He died in the locker room after the game. Yeah. But they still put together. They still played the championship game, I think, in '48, didn't they? Lost to the Eagles.
Yeah, 7-0. I've seen videos of that game. They couldn't tell what yard line was on. They had to get the people
to. Yeah.
Yeah. And the only time they've been in a Super Bowl was in Arizona in 2008, and the Steelers beat them.
That's right. Yeah.
That's it. It's so in every sport they have the teams like that who have been around for a million years and make it very infrequently.
Yeah. So I think football has the best system, but as far as distribution of players and equating or eventually creating parity. Basketball does a pretty good job too if teams draft wisely.
Yeah.
Hockey.
But baseball.
I don't follow.
Yeah.
Forget baseball. Yeah, forget baseball. Parity is never going to
impossible.
exist.
Yeah.
It is impossible. Yeah. But
Bill Beck proposed revenue sharing, and when he owned the Browns, and he was accused of being a communist.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, he was accused of a lot of things, but he did a lot. He did a lot for baseball in those years. But getting back to the way the athletes themselves are treated during this COVID situation. I mean, these college players they're making money for the universities, and they're not getting anything out of it themselves. All they're getting out of it, the really elite ones, are a crack at the NFL. And as we said, probably 70-80% of the players who appeared on Monday night were appearing in their last collegiate game, and they'll never play in a pro game. So they ended their careers on the field that night, which is true of every team this year. A lot of teams send no players to the pros at all. These guys are playing, and they're creating revenue for the universities, big revenue in the Big Ten and the SEC, and they're getting nothing out of it really. And they're still, the NCAA refuses to really give fair hearing to the player movement, to the athletes movement to get paid for what get some kind of recompense besides a scholarship, which often at state school isn't very much for a guy who's playing in state. The NCAA still is still refusing to give him what I think it should a fair hearing and do something to remedy the situation.
Yeah, there's a book that came out several years ago, which I have around somewhere, called $1 Billion Ball, and it's about the major school football programs, and they describe some of them. And you got Phil Knight, the guy who owns Nike, contributing to Oregon a lot. I think they discussed the Texas A&M program and one or two others in depth. They were making money from this, making money from that, and they won't give the players a dime.
No, and I think that's terrible. Yeah, I do. I don't understand why some of our legals who are working mostly in the political scene at the moment aren't willing to spend a little time, maybe even pro bono, with these college athletes and give them some representation and some advice and get them a fair shake, because I think it's a long time in coming, and they definitely deserve it now.
Yeah, well,
the risk they're taking to play.
A bunch of years ago, there was a former UCLA basketball player that sued the NCAA because they were using his likeness for free.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I think they won the suit.
Yeah, he did. I think he did. I don't remember who it was, but yeah, definitely. But I don't know. I think it's a bad situation that's been made worse, and I think it needs to be rectified, because I think the continuing to play when COVID is around in the college basketball. I don't know. I'll be surprised if there's an NCAA tournament this year, which is, unless they play in a bubble, and
it's supposed to be all in Indianapolis.
All in Indianapolis.
There's no East regions or West. Yeah, the regionals, because one of them was the Eastern Regional was supposed to be at the Madison Square Garden this year, but everything from that NCAA is going to be played in Indianapolis. There's nowhere else they're going to have a game this year if they had, as you said, if they have it at all.
Yeah. So it's I think we've pretty well covered what we set out to do.
Yeah.
And I hope we've left people with some thoughts of their own. I think they might, otherwise might not have, given consideration to it yet. But the athletes are definitely, particularly the amateur athletes, are definitely getting the short end of the situation, of the current situation, and even the pro athletes, they're putting their careers and their lives and their families at risk, and playing out the season. And we can only hope that there aren't any devastating results that come from it. And in the meantime, of course, we're all enjoying what they're doing, and it's almost impossible to think living without it, given what the average fan is facing.
Football, basketball, and hockey are all television sports.
Yeah.
But, it's going to be what it is, and you and I don't. Neither of us have control over any of it. No, we don't. All we can do is watch and wait, and hope for the best. I think at this point, and enjoy it as much as we can. And I really enjoyed talking with you. It's always a pleasure.
Get some new ideas on me.
Yeah.
Me too, and I look forward to doing it again soon now. And
okay, say hello to Marilyn for me.
I will. Thank you, Al.
Okay.
My pleasure.
Bye-bye.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.